Now is the time and place for a meeting of the Beaverton Planning Commission. If you would like to speak during the visitor portion of the agenda or provide testimony on an agenda item, please use the raise hand feature in your Zoom menu bar. If calling in, press 9 to alert to the chair you would like to speak. For the record, I will do roll call to verify which commission members are participating this evening. We have Commissioner Akal, Ellis, Lawler, Winter. And absent this evening is Vice Chair McCann, who is here participating on the applicant team, and therefore has recused herself from the meeting. Commissioner Glenn Winkle is excused and absent from the meeting tonight. The visitor section of the agenda is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on a non-agenda issue or item. Anyone wishing to speak should indicate to staff and wait for your name to be called. Does anyone wish to address the Planning Commission on a non-agenda issue? Okay, seeing nothing, we will move on to commission communications. Any commission communications, commissioners? Okay, seeing none, staff communication.
Good evening, Chair Nye, Anna Splatinsky, Planning Division Manager. I do not have any staff communications this evening.
Okay, great. Then we can move right into new business. The only item on the agenda tonight is the application for LU 32023-00260 Beaverton High School replacement. Case files CU 32023-00445, DR 32023-00251, DDR 12023-00446, HDR 32023-00253, SDM 12023-00254, SDM 12023-00255, SV 32023-00256, TP 32023-00258, and VR 32023-00259. The applicant has the burden of providing that the applications are consistent with the Beaverton Development Code, Comprehensive Plan, and any applicable code provisions. The criteria that must be addressed in the hearing are the Development Code sections 40.03.1, Facilities Review, 40.15.15.3.c, major modifications of a conditional use, 40.20.15.3.c, design review 3, 40.20.15.1.c, downtown design review compliance letter, 40.35.15.3.c, demolition of a landmark, 40.58.15.c, sidewalk design modification, 40.75.15.1.c, street vacation, 40.90.15.3.c, tree plan 3, and 40.95.5.1.c, variance. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards these approval criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan that the speaker believes to apply to the application. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to allow the Planning Commission and other interested parties to an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Anyone who submits comments or gives oral testimony has standing to appeal this decision. Failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. State and local law require commissioners to make certain disclosures. To these ends, the following questions will be asked. Does any commissioner have a potential or actual conflict of interest, ex parte contacts, or site visits to declare? Commissioner Akal?
I do not. To all three.
Okay. Commissioner Ellis?
Frequent inconsequential visits due to family living right down the street on 6th Street there, like every other day. But other than that, no conflicts.
Okay, Commissioner Lawler.
No conflicts, but I did conduct a site visit today, but did not encounter anyone or have any discussions
Okay.
at that time.
Great. Commissioner Winter.
I took a site visit yesterday afternoon for about 45 minutes. I had no contact with anybody. I have no conflicts.
Okay. And no to all three for me. Again, I want to state for the record that Commissioner McCann is a member of the applicant's team tonight and has a conflict of interest. She has therefore recused herself from participation in the meeting as a planning commission member. Does any member of the audience wish to question a commissioner about an ex parte contact or site visits, or challenge the right of a commissioner to participate in this hearing? Okay, let the record show no response. The order of the public hearing tonight is as followed. City staff will give a presentation followed by commissioners' questions of staff. Then the applicant will be given 20 minutes for its presentation, followed by commission questions of the applicant. Then members of the public in support of the application can speak for up to 5 minutes each, followed by members of the public opposed to the application will also be given 5 minutes each. And last, members of the public who are neither in support nor opposed will have 5 minutes each. After public testimony, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The Planning Commission will then hear any final comments from staff. We will now begin with city staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Nye. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Steve Regner. I'm a senior planner with the City of Beaverton, and the application before you tonight is case file LU3 2023-00260, Beaverton High School rebuild. In summary, the proposal includes the reconstruction of most of Beaverton High School, which you can see in red to the right. There are 9 land use applications submitted, major modification of conditional use, design review 3, a downtown design review compliance letter, historic review, demolition of a landmark. There are 2 sidewalk design modification applications, a street vacation, a tree plan 3, and a variance for building height. As mentioned earlier, there are 2 supplemental memos, one published this morning and one published late this afternoon. Both memos convey public comment received after publication of the staff report. And the memo this morning also includes a memo from the applicant requesting the modification of certain conditions of approval. The project is located at 13120 Southwest 2nd Street. The entire campus is approximately 28 acres. It's located in the Central Beaverton neighborhood, and a large majority of the site is zoned residential mixed C. There's a very small sliver on the east side. You can see that's actually zoned RCOT. There's a small portion of the site, or of the proposed area on THPRD property. That's the swim center. And THPRD authorization has been provided to do the work on this site, or that portion of the site, I should say. Here's a site plan of the entire campus here. Much of what's happening on the east and southern portions of the campus, mostly recreation areas, will stay the same, but there is significant changes happening in the northeast portion of the site where the new main high school building will be located. The center of the eastern campus will mostly be composed of parking, queuing, and circulation for vehicles. On the western portion of the site, new tennis courts and a new field house building on the southern portion of that red rectangle will be constructed. A small stadium storage building there in the red square there will be constructed. And as I mentioned before, a small portion on the eastern edge is the extension of a multi-use trail will also be included with this proposal. The first land use application is the major modification of a conditional use. This application is required because with the proposal, there is going to be the addition of approximately 11,500 square feet of floor area with the high school. Staff does find that the proposal is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. First, it's been a high school for several decades and has proven to be compatible with the neighborhood. In addition, there is no proposal to increase student or staff levels. Therefore, there will be no additional trips or other issues with queuing on site. So staff finds that the major modification of conditional use approval criteria has been satisfied. Moving on to the design review 3, here is the site plan. Again, I kind of walked you through, and these are the elevations for the main school building. It's kind of a horseshoe shape with a courtyard in the middle. You can see all of the elevations are articulated through significant glazing, changes in material, and other openings to provide that change of interest to break up the facade. The 2 other additional buildings proposed, the Westfield House and Stadium Storage, are significantly smaller, and therefore they do not have the elaborate and extensive visual interest as the main building does. But based on their size, use requirements, and location, staff finds that the design of each of these buildings does meet the applicable approval criteria. I do want to take a minute and talk about access across the site. What I'm showing here is Exhibit 3M of the applicant's materials, showing access to, through, and around the site. But what I want to focus mostly on are 2 internal pathways traveling east-west across the east campus between Stott and Erickson. There is one internal pathway located essentially aligned with the intersection of 2nd and Stott, traveling west to Erickson, shown in this green arrow here. An additional internal pathway aligned with 3rd and Stott, moving from Stott to Erickson, located here. The development code, more specifically section 605525.9, talks about access ways, frequency of access ways, and how they should be designed. First, access ways are defined as one or more connections that provide pedestrian and bicycle passage between streets or a street and a destination. And it goes into more depth about frequency, saying that block lengths greater than 1,200 feet may require 2 or more connections. The distance between Farmington and 5th Street, measured north to south, is about 1,300 feet. So per the development code requirements, 2 access ways are warranted through the property. The code continues to talk about the actual design of the access ways, stating that they shall be as short as possible and wherever practical, straight enough to allow one end of the path to be visible from the other, and that access ways shall be located to provide a reasonably direct connection between likely pedestrian and bicycle locations. Based on that description and the applicant's material, staff does believe that the current design does meet the requirements of Development Code 605525.9, but staff does have concerns about possible future restrictions of that access. As such, staff has proposed a condition of approval, which is condition of approval 2 in the design review application, design review 3 application, which states that the applicant shall not construct or erect any physical barriers that prevents the direct travel of pedestrians and cyclists across the east campus between Southwest Stott and Southwest Erickson along the 2 east-west access ways, generally aligned with the intersection of Southwest 2nd and Stott and the intersection of Southwest 3rd and Stott. These 2 access ways are shown in the applicant's plans, Exhibit 3M, which is a portion of what you're seeing on the right there. In the applicant's August 21st memo, which was circulated this morning, the applicant requested to slightly modify this condition by adding the word permanent in reference to physical barriers. Staff does have some concerns about the usage of that word, mostly the lack of clarity about how the term permanent would be interpreted and implemented, and conversely, how something temporary would be interpreted and implemented. Does temporary mean 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? The condition of approval written this way would not provide that clarity and would be difficult to interpret and implement. Due to that lack of clarity, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission approve the proposal with the condition as shown on the screen and written in the staff report, excluding the word permanent as requested by the applicant. Moving on to the downtown design review compliance letter. I think this is the first project we've had where both a design review and a downtown design review has been bundled in the same proposal. And that's because the scope of the project does creep slightly into the downtown design district, which does trigger the need for this additional design review. It is very narrow in scope and addresses an existing multi-use pathway that exists along the eastern edge of the campus connecting 5th Street North, which currently dumps out into driveway, which is not a great condition. Thankfully, the school district, as applicant, is proposing to improve this condition by 1, removing the driveway, and 2, extending the multi-use path to the north to the new intersection of Stott and 3rd Street. With the landscaping and trail improvements, staff finds that this is a safe, desirable extension of multi-use path and meets the approval criteria for the downtown design review compliance letter. Moving on to the historic landmark demolition. The applicant is proposing to demolish a landmark that is on our local historic inventory. The Merle Davies School, as it's referred to in the inventory, but more commonly referred to these days as the Merle Davies Annex. The structure was originally built in 1937 and subsequently named for Merle Davies to honor the longtime teacher and principal with the Beaverton School District. In reading the local inventory entry for this building, it is clear that most of the connection to the historic value of this building is actually tied to the honoring of Merle Davies herself, and not necessarily to any architectural style of the building. In addition to that lack of historic architectural character, the applicant has provided correspondence with the State Historic Preservation Office, noting that heavy renovations over the years, both interior and exterior, have rendered the site no longer eligible for National Registry eligibility. The entire insides have been renovated from time to time. New windows have been replaced, the entries have been relocated, and SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, has determined that the eligibility is no longer there for the National Registry. That, in addition to environmental concerns and economic concerns related to lead, asbestos, and structural and seismic remediation that would be necessary for the continued use, further kind of tip the scales in terms of economic and environment social considerations versus the historic value of preservation. As such, staff does support the demolition of this historic landmark. Moving on to the first sidewalk design modification, Southwest Erickson is identified as either a 2 or 3 lane collector, depending on where it is along the corridor, which requires a 7.5 foot wide landscape strip and a 6 foot wide sidewalk. After dedication, there are existing structures that would encroach into the right-of-way, more specifically 2 buildings shown in yellow here, and these 2 images here are both oriented north to the right, so Southwest 5th Street is at the very left edge of the top image. Moving north to the right, there's a match line, and then the bottom image continues to the north. The top image in yellow shows the stadium seating, and the bottom image shows an existing stadium storage building, and the green line shows the proposed right-of-way. So you can see both of those buildings are would partially be within the right-of-way after dedication. Additionally, there are 4 stadium lights that would be within the right-of-way following dedication. Typically, per city policy, city does not accept right-of-way dedications with structural encroachments. However, the city does value obtaining full dedication at this time. So the city is open to entering into an encroachment agreement with the applicant for some or all of the encroachments. And conditions of approval have been written to anticipate whether all encroachments are agreed to remain or if some encroachments have to be relocated. The condition of approval anticipates both, essentially saying if any of these encroachments are required to be removed, that full sidewalk with a landscape strip and the sidewalk on the ultimate location would have to be built in lieu of what is shown here. Moving on to the second sidewalk design modification on Southwest 5th. Similarly, this is a collector requiring the same 7.5 foot wide landscape strip and 6 foot sidewalk. The existing track and fencing, much like the buildings before, would encroach into the right-of-way after dedication. You can see the green line going through the, probably the 2 outside lanes of the track. And this is causing curb tight sidewalks along a portion of it. The city, much like Erickson, has acknowledged an interest in entering into an encroachment agreement for these track and fences. So the applicant has requested a sidewalk design modification to build these curb tight to go around the existing track. The next application is street vacation. There is an unimproved segment of 3rd Street on what's kind of calling the West Campus. You can see it in here. It would connect Southwest Fairmont to Erickson Avenue. This has been a platted paper street, I believe, since the 1940s. But for the entirety of its existence, I believe it's functioned essentially as recreation areas and would continue to function as a recreation area in the applicant's current proposal. The applicant's materials demonstrate that the ORS consent requirement has been met. There is enough land area in the surrounding areas to consent to the vacation. And there are no conflicts with policies in either the comprehensive plan or the TSP that would prevent staff from supporting this vacation. So staff does support this vacation, but does note that City Council is actually the final decision maker for street vacation. So any votes tonight in support or in opposition of the vacation would merely be a recommendation to Council. That is the only application here that will go to Council after this hearing has finalized. Next application is the Tree Plan 3, and this relates to historic trees on site. The site is only one of 6 sites in the city of Beaverton designated as a site with historic trees. Originally, when the inventory was done and the site was designated as having historic trees, this was sometime in the 80s, and there were upwards of 40 plus trees on site. However, today only 12 trees remain, and that's partially a function of past land use actions getting approval to remove some trees, and some trees just being removed due to natural causes. Out of the 12 trees on site, the applicant requests to remove 11 of them. 5 of the trees would be removed due to the location of the new main high school building. And 6 of the trees are along public frontages, 2 along Erickson and 4 along Farmington Road. All 6 of those trees have been demonstrated would be severely damaged by either the new frontage improvements with sidewalks and curbs, or by the undergrounding of utilities doing too much root damage for their trees to remain viable. The one large cedar tree at the northeast corner of the site is proposed to remain. The last application is the variance, and this is for the maximum height of the main high school building. In the RMC zone, the maximum height is 35 feet. The main high school building is proposed to be as tall as 62 feet, which is 27 feet over the allowed height. The applicant asserts several reasons for needing to exceed the height requirements. The first being that they need a multi-story building required due to other on-site programming, parking, circulation, other outdoor recreation needs. The theater fly tower is actually the tallest portion of the building. It's just that small portion of the building going up to 62 feet. Much of the rest of the building, where it's 3 stories, is closer to 50 feet. And the applicant also states that the grades on site and other academic design needs require a higher than typical floor to ceiling height, which is the reason why much of the rest of the 3-story building is closer to 50 feet, when a typical 3-story building might be closer to 35 or 40 feet. Based on the rationale and findings provided by the applicant, staff does agree that the variance is warranted. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of LU 3 2023-00260 Beaverton High School rebuild with conditions as modified by the August 23rd, 2023 memo. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Okay. Do any commissioners have questions for staff? Commissioner Ellis.
Yeah, hi there. Great walkthrough, a ton of content. Appreciate that. Two technical questions for the layperson here. Could you expand a bit when you say vacation of street? Obviously, it's not the street taking a Mexican vacation and drinking on the beach. So what does that mean to vacate a street?
As nice as that sounds, sadly, it's much more boring and bureaucratic. Essentially, what it is that there is land that is dedicated as right of way with the indication that this should be a future street someday. To vacate the street to means that it would be no longer managed by the city as right of way. Would be returned to the adjacent owners and function as real property. So you could build structures there. But the right to travel through as right of way would no longer exist. So it would essentially make it a buildable land.
Cool. Okay, that makes sense. And I was hoping you were going to say that context. And then the other question, maybe more of an opinion question, but the conditional approval item around the potential insertion of the word permanent around the barriers for the parking lot entries and exits. Looking at the memo from the school around the commentary around how the district has statutory and policy obligations to be able to secure their grounds, how does the recommendation kind of comport with that, with their desire to be able to secure the ground? Do we feel that not explicitly calling out a non-permanent installation would still allow for them to do what they need to do?
I think the struggle that staff is dealing with is a little bit of the lack of explicit scenarios or greater clarity about what sorts of types of structures they are looking to be able to do. So it's mostly that lack of clarity that is giving staff pause in supporting the request. Oh, I believe you're muted.
Apologies. Yeah. So this is out of my scope, obviously, but if the applicant returned with potential scenarios and examples of this is how, when, and why we would deploy and what it would look like something like that may clarify for staff purposes.
That would make it easier for staff to understand the scope, the time and the manner, to then be able to render a recommendation. But like I said, based on the kind of the vagueness, we do have a lot of apprehension about supporting it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Do other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Lawler.
I just have a very general question. When the staff report, I'll specify page 59, talked about fences and walls constructed of attractive, durable materials, it was cited that there will be I'm on the wrong paragraph. Retaining walls over 6 feet in height, greater than 50 feet in length. And it was described that there will be a wall of 300 feet long. And unfortunately, whenever I tried to get any detailed map drawn up on my computer, it crashed. So could you show us where that 300 foot long, 4 foot high wall is on the northeast and north sides?
Absolutely. Give me just 1 second to pull up the right drawing here. The fun of a project of this size is that you have to actually have individual sheet sets and you've got a tiled one. So pulling up, the cleanest version with the right sheet set can be a little tricky. And that doesn't even begin to deal with any technical issues you might have. So bear with me, and hopefully I don't have the same crash issue. I will have one up in just a moment for you.
I don't have any problem necessarily with landscape walls because I think high schoolers love to sit against retaining walls, but I was just unclear where it was located.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. I think it does go across a couple different sheets, so I can maybe give you an idea. Okay, let's try this one on for size, and we'll see if this helps. All right, so we'll try this screen. Okay, hopefully you're able to see my screen here. So this is the very southeast portion of the site. You can see this is where the multi-use trail is. If we go very up to the north, you can see this narrow gray line goes up there. And then if we go to, let's see, 206, bear with me as I drive a little bit hectically here, and then zoom back in, you can see the continuation of the retaining wall here, and then it bears west around the parking lot here. So it really does kind of wrap around these existing play areas.
Okay. So, and you, I think your comment was that it would be incorporated into the landscaping plan. Yeah. I do see some trees there, and I see some grid pattern, which I'm assuming is some sort of ground cover or something?
Yeah, so that is a planting area. This hatch here is a planting area, and you're right. It will run along the length of the retaining wall as well here. So the wall will be internally facing, so not very
Okay.
visible from the public. And for those using the site, there will be some landscaping along the face of the wall to soften the edge of the retaining wall further and to better incorporate it into the landscaping.
Okay, so the turf field is lower than the street edge. Is that what I'm understanding? That's
I
where
believe that is correct. Yes.
Okay,
I'd have to go
that's
back and
the
check the
fault.
grading plan, but that's my recollection. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for pointing that out. That was really just a clarification. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCall, did you have sorry, Commissioner Ellis, did you have additional?
I did. Apologies for double dipping. Just one thing that I forgot to ask. The comment earlier in the staff report about how the plans don't entertain additional students or additional growth in class and staff and so on and so forth as part of the new plans. Does that, and please punt this to the applicant if you need to, but does that align with the updated high school boundaries that have been redrawn that have potentially pushed or pulled student population from that school?
I'm absolutely going to punt that to the applicant, but I
Right.
will make one point of clarification, is that a previous conditional use that still is applicable to the site, and this action tonight will not change that, is that the site is actually eligible to have up to 2,200 students. So while the current design I don't believe we'll be able to accommodate that. The site essentially is vested to have another 700 students if they want to expand more. But anything beyond that, I will defer to the applicant about their district boundaries.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the staff? Okay, I have a couple of questions if I can find them. Is there no requirement that the building entrance be oriented to the street?
In a residential zone, there is not. Those are for that applies to commercial and multiple use zones. But by this site being in the residential zone, that does not kick in.
Okay. Okay. Do you know offhand what the Old Town height limits are just adjacent to the east?
They are, in the most part, oh boy, you're testing my memory of code I wrote 3 years ago. I should know this. 65 feet.
Okay, so this building would be in context with buildings built to right.
That is correct.
Okay. And then it looks like they are meeting their bike parking requirements, even though it graphically looks very light on bike parking.
Their stated numeric bike parking provision does meet the proposal. We do have a condition of approval in there that shows at site development that they need to meet it both locationally, numerically, and dimensionally. So when the construction permits come in, we'll actually have even more refined drawings. So we will have, in case there's something not quite right, we will have another bite at the apple at site development permit review to make sure we do have the correct number. But at this point, I do believe they're showing the appropriate amount, and their narrative does state the correct amount, or at least enough to meet the code requirements.
And then talking about the gating of the parking lot, does that gating that they're requesting ability to do it in the future, it sounds like, does that include like fully securing the site so like there will be no east-west public pedestrian connection?
So I will in some ways defer to the applicant to let them talk a little bit about what potential future barriers could be placed. Certainly using the term permanent as requested by the applicant would preclude the ability to fully fence to prevent any access in the future. But if they were to put up a, not accusing them of doing this, but just hypothetically, placing a temporary fence for several months would impede travel, but arguably isn't permanent because it's rentable fence you can move around. I think that's where we're having a little bit of, if nothing else, a semantic argument about what permanent does and does not mean.
Yeah, okay. It seems like that east-west pedestrian connection through the site's pretty important for the neighborhood.
Staff would agree with that statement, yes.
Okay, those were all of my questions. I'll ask one more time. Do any of commissioners have additional questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the applicant presentation. The applicant will have 20 minutes to present. Please begin by introducing yourself and stating your name and address for the record. I know Steve Sparks knows all of this, so please take it away.
Contact information is in the chat. We're pleased to be here this evening to present to you Beaverton School District's proposal to replace Beaverton High School. This project represents the largest financial commitment of the district's 2022 capital bond program to the Beaverton community. The current building opened 107 years ago, at which time this was the edge of Beaverton. And as noted earlier, it's grown up around, residential areas have grown up around us. The building has been added to over the years, but the building has exceeded its lifespan in service to the community and requires replacement for a variety of reasons. Tonight, we have our entire project team here to present the proposal to you. And the design of the site and building are the most important part of our application package. I'll now turn it over to our architectural team to take it from here.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chair Nye and Commissioners. My name is Karina Ruiz. I am a principal at Brick Architecture and have the pleasure of reviewing our engagement process with you today. My address is also in the chat. Because of the important nature of this project, we took a very intentional approach in ensuring that we were able to get as broad a perspective from as many community members as possible. And that is what you see reflected in what we call our equity commissioning process that is outlined here. The main points is that we really worked to ensure that we built rigor into a system to not only seek feedback from those that, quite frankly, are furthest from educational equity, but also to ensure that everyone impacted by the project, from students to teachers to community members to boosters to longtime alumni, had an opportunity to shape what we were designing. And then the rigor to ensure that we're holding ourselves accountable to that moving forward. Next. Towards that end, I think we have done what I think is, quite frankly, the most rigorous and inclusive engagement process I've ever done on a project, having worked in educational architecture for 30 years. We held over 93 meetings over the course of the last year and a half, and met with over 500 participants, again, representing all of those vital communities. And really focused on, again, trying to ensure that we were tuning ourselves and centering the voices of those who have historically, because of social identities, been furthest from educational equity, furthest from opportunity, but ensuring that we provided plenty of opportunities to hear from folks from all walks of life and in any connection to the high school in the early phases, and then have continued to go to them as the design has been developed to ensure that we are proceeding accordingly, according to what we have, so that the ultimate design is reflective of their wants and desires. Next. And so we want to take an opportunity to talk you through what we learned. What you see on screen here are 12 guiding principles that really have shaped the design of the project. I won't go through these in great detail, but what I will point out is that, again, the main desire is to intentionally design the school to be as inclusive as possible, to be as reflective of the community that we serve, to promote the well-being of students and staff, and to also ensure that really the final design reflects the unique, engaging, and evolving character of the school community and of the urban Beaverton community as well. So that really is, those are the guidelines that have shaped our design that we continue to go back to, that become the lens for decision making, and that you'll hear both our site design and our building design teams talk about being the sort of emphasis for the design decisions moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea to talk about the site design.
All right. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, everyone. My contact information is also in the chat. But just to introduce myself, I'm Chelsea McCann. I am with Walker Macy. We are serving as the landscape architects on the project. And I'm going to start off the design portion of the presentation talking about the campus organization and site design before I hand it over to Jessica, who will talk about architecture. The existing BHS campus that you see here today in this diagram is a very constrained site and actually fairly small for the amount of program that is needed to support a modern high school. Beaverton has done its best to support growth in the student population and address academic and student needs. However, the reality of working within the existing buildings and site has compromised and restricted what the school can offer its students. Facilities are spread across multiple buildings, and what the school can offer in terms of classes and resources ends up being limited by their capacity. Parking is scattered all around the site, and there is no real secure open space for students to be in during the day. The redevelopment of the high school is going to open up significant opportunity for the district to create a more organized campus, consolidate facilities and student resources, and create a better environment with spaces for students to gather throughout the day. So let's move on to the next slide. So this is a diagram showing how we're organizing the site going forward. And I do want to highlight that another constraint on this project is that the existing school has to remain operational during construction. And because it is such a tight site, there's nowhere to sort of put the students. So because of this restriction, the redevelopment is going to be placing the new school on the north side of the campus. And we'll also be retaining the athletics in their current location on the south of the school and to the west of Erickson. Once the new school building is constructed, the majority of parking is going to be located between these two newly defined academic and athletic zones. So the academic being at the north and athletic at the south. In the footprint of the main high school building today, that is going to become then the future parking zone. And the placement of that is going to allow the new parking to easily serve the daily needs of the school as well as athletic and community events. The campus design is developed with pedestrian access as the primary circulation. So you see with the orange arrows, we have the large north-south spine that connects through the middle of the site, linking academic and athletic zones, as well as those east-west pedestrian connectors that we've already talked about a few times today. We're happy to talk about more, that more or less align with 2nd and 3rd Avenue and cross all the way through the site. And they are open for both students as well as community members to use that circulation. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a rendering of the campus plan with a little more detail. So you can see those parking areas. The parking areas are the large lot on the west, kind of in the middle of campus is lot 5. And it's going to have bus drop-off as well as staff and visitor parking on that side. The lots on the east side are going to include parent drop-off, student and overflow parking, and the northernmost small lot behind the cafeteria is designed for sped drop-off. So it really kind of consolidates and organizes the circulation for vehicles. Those pedestrian pathways through campus are designed to welcome people as they arrive and create nice open pathways with plantings and spaces to rest as you move in and through the campus. Those east-west connectors, as they move across Erickson, are going to be including elevated crossings that will create a safer environment for pedestrians, as well as a visual and physical cue for vehicles on Erickson to slow down. So it'll make a nicer connection for students and visitors who are moving between the two sides of campus. The main building is going to include a large courtyard space that's going to give students a secure place to be outdoors during the day and can also be used for community or after hours events, things like theater performances and basketball games. The layout of the athletic facilities are largely similar to what BHS has today. that are going to include new circulation and ticketing for both the track stadium area, as well as the baseball and softball fields. There's going to be new synthetic surfacing on the main fields, relocated tennis, and a new field house and small storage buildings that were brought up by Steve earlier. The overall campus will further be improved to provide new plantings around the perimeter that are going to soften the edges and the street frontages. So the next slide. So as Karina noted, the overall site design and concept was developed in collaboration with the district, students, staff, and community. And you see themes and ideas from those discussions appearing in the site and the architectural design. We went through many, many iterations of the concept and really took that feedback into account to get to where we are. So for the site, the idea is to create a series of spaces throughout the school and the site that are sort of like jewels. They're the special moments or experiences at the school. And in the site, those are places for gathering, studying, and learning that are tucked throughout the open space. The character of the landscape is intended to tie the school and site to its surroundings in the Pacific Northwest. Materials are selected to be fairly simple and durable, but are going to be high quality, including things like concrete, some steel, as well as highlighting zones of wood and maybe some natural stone. And we're also hoping to include playful furnishings because this should be a fun place to be. Plantings are selected to be drought tolerant. Will include both native and adaptive species, plant and tree species that are going to meet the district's desire to limit water use on the site. The outcome is going to be a lush new landscape, and it's actually going to have over 400 new trees, which is approximately a 75% increase in the total number of trees that you see on campus today. So it's going to be a huge change and a really nice one. So with that, Jessica, I think I will hand this over to you to talk about architecture.
Thanks, Chelsea. My name is Jessica Molinar, and I'm with Brick Architecture. My address is in the chat, and I'm here to walk you through the design of the building. But before we get to that, we want to take a quick look at the context of the site, which is rapidly changing. As you can see from the map, there's a wide range of scale of buildings near the site. The footprints are shown in black on the map. To the north, we have multi-story civic, commercial, and mixed-use residential buildings, some of which are shown on this slide. And to the south, closer to the site, we have 1- and 2-story commercial and civic buildings, as well as some new, larger mixed-use residential buildings. Some of the key takeaways we glean from these are the use of varied massing, articulation, materials, and details to reduce the perceived scale of the larger buildings and make them more pedestrian-friendly. Circling back to the building design and the project outreach that Karina described, we took what we heard and learned and used it to create this design concept that we are pretty excited about, which is the Beaverton High School community is made of many different cultures, each with their own art, history, architecture, fashion, and forms of expression. You can see some examples of those here. These are woven together in a design that reflects and highlights these cultures in a positive way, using conceptual beads, threads, and jewels to organize the building and highlights special spaces in a cohesive manner. These special places are the jewels. They're opportunities to showcase and celebrate Beaverton High School, especially communities that don't often see themselves represented. Jewels create spaces where everyone can be recognized, seen, and celebrated. At the top, we have our original concept sketch. The beads are shown in the blue and teal circles. We have jewels shown with unique shapes and colors and sizes. And then threads are the orange lines that are tying it all together. And then in the second image, we see how that concept sketch translates to the design of the facade. The teal and blue become windows and accent panels. The jewels become orange rectangles, which become apertures on the facade. And the threads become horizontal datum lines that keep everything organized and cohesive. Here at the north facade along Farmington, you can start to see the beads and jewels and to hint of the threads. In all of the following images, the trees that would obscure the view of the building are shown outlined. In reality, once the trees are mature, you wouldn't see as much of the building as you do here. As we get closer to the building, here we're at the northwest corner at Erickson and Farmington, we start to really see all of the components. We see the beads, which are windows and accent panels. The jewels, which are apertures of varying sizes. In some cases, they connect floors to create visual interest and balance the horizontality of the massing. The shapes vary, but they all have faceted edges with recessed windows. And the threads are these horizontal datum lines. We really worked hard to reduce the perceived scale of the building, especially along Farmington, which is our longest facade. Here, some of the bigger massing moves we made include angling the northeast portion of the building backward and cantilevering it over the ground floor near the center of the facade. Also pushing the height of the building down at the corners at Stott and Erickson, and using the apertures as an opportunity to break the roof line. Which you can also see here from the northwest corner of the building at roughly Stott and Farmington, or really Southwest Broadway Drive. Continuing along Stott, we pushed the massing of the theater inward and wrapped it with program that required shorter massing to further reduce the scale of the building along the street and respond to the smaller scale of the buildings in the older downtown area. As we go around the south of the building, this is the western portion of the south facade at the bus drop-off. We see similar massing moves with the apertures breaking the roof line and a break in the massing that pushes the third story back at the southeast corner. We also start to get a closer look at building materials. The gray strips are metal panels in chevron profile, which is basically a repeating V shape. Because of the angles, which are like small facets, and the smooth finish, it responds to light in a dynamic way, much like a jewel, and can look very different depending on the time of day and season. In this view, you'll notice that the panels appear homogeneous and uniform, but as we move around the building and the daylight settings of the view change, you'll see how different they appear. Charcoal and orange accent panels are integrally colored, high density fiber cement. Windows are aluminum storefront or curtain wall. And we have dark colored brick in a stacked bond pattern at grade for maintenance and durability, which is in this view obscured by landscaping. Here's a closer look at the main building entry from the pedestrian spine that runs north-south between the school and the stadium. It's a large 2-story aperture clad in the accent color with a large canopy that extends outward to highlight it as the main entry and provide weather protection. As we go around to the southwest corner, we get a closer look at some of the facade articulation. We have metal siding strips in different widths that shift between floor levels. We also have fiber cement accent panels in varying widths that also shift between floor levels, and stair plinths and awnings at the street level, as well as a significant amount of glazing on all stories. Back at the corner of Erickson and Farmington, we get a closer look at what the landscape might be like near the building. It adds visual interest and serves as a buffer between the street and the building, as well as giving us a closer look at the building and the articulation. And looking more closely at the corner of Stott and Farmington, we get another view of landscape buffer, and also see that along Farmington, the glazing extends to the foundation slab to allow for as much light, transparency, and an active frontage as possible. And that concludes the tour.
So that concludes the architectural tour, and I'll wrap up by saying in closing that we've read the staff report and supplemental materials. We agree with the staff's recommendation with the minor exceptions as we identified in our memorandum to you dated August 21st, which is exhibit, let's see, 3.AB. Our concerns with condition number 2 are that 1, ORS states that authorizes the district to control access on school grounds, event access on school grounds. We also feel that Beaverton Code section 605525.9 requires the city to identify a high level of impact created by this project. We would suggest to you that our impact is improving the existing situation, and that we keep in mind that we have 11 residential properties on 2nd Street to the west of us that would benefit from a pedestrian access through the site. The majority of the area west of Erickson is blocked off by the fields. And so people who live west of our site would go up to 5th Street or down to Farmington to walk to the area east of us in the old town. And lastly, we think that this is near exaction in requiring us to provide this permanent access across the site. We don't have any justification for such an exaction, and we would request that, although we are not, as a part of this project, proposing any kind of obstruction on through the middle of the site, as noted in Chelsea's slide a few moments ago, we do need to preserve the ability to control that should circumstances that occur in the future, and none of us can predict the future, require us to provide that kind of security to our campus. Like I said, we can't predict rather what that scenario would be, but we do need to preserve that ability for our successors here at the district to respond deliberately and intentionally should the need arise. So with that, we're here to answer any questions that you might have, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, great. Do commissioners have questions? Commissioner Ellis.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. Appreciate the walkthrough there. Very, very in depth. Question on the courtyard, and apologies if I missed this in the reading, or maybe it's small on the drawing. It looks like there's 2 open pathways from outside of the enclosure of the school into the courtyard. Do those pathways, are they controllable? Are they securable?
Yeah. So both the pathways are gated, so they are able to be secured. How the district or the school chooses to do that, I think is up to them, but that allows at least interior security for students during the day, so not just anyone can walk into the courtyard. That said, the area that is open is basically the parking all the way to those pathways between the middle of the site that's open all the way through.
Cool. Okay. And then also respecting that the new parking layout has much higher capacity than the old one. Does the district plan to, I don't know what the district does with those satellite lots on the east side, if they either own or lease that space or whatever is happening there. Are y'all giving that up, or is that being repurposed?
No, those lots are remaining the way they are. We own those properties, and they'll be used for student parking.
Okay, so that would be additional parking on top of what we see in the drawings.
That is correct.
Cool. Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Do any other commissioners have questions? The applicant. I would request, could you walk us through, well, I guess my primary question or concern around the bike parking is how much bike parking is being provided near the front entrance of the school? So on that primary north half.
I apologize, Commissioner. I am going to have to dig up the exact number, but there are 2 of our major banks are near the front door, and some right next to the front door, and some along the other facade. I can get you an actual count, but we do have a significant number there. And then beyond that, we have bike parking scattered around at some of the key points, so key entries, say into the stadium zone and over to the baseball, softball, some of those key entry points where we can imagine people are arriving by bike and might want to walk up nearby. I can get back to the exact number on that.
I think my concern is, like, you were required to have 114-ish. And it looks like there's less than 50 by the front door of the school. So I would advocate for more bike parking. I think as the downtown is densifying, we're getting more developments in the area of the transit center and downtown. There will be more bikers than we've ever had in the past in this area. And with the loop going in, there's just a lot of bike improvements going in the neighborhood. So I want to make sure you guys encourage alternative transportation over the cars in the future. So that was my only question or about the bike parking, is whether you really have enough at the front of the building. If there are no other questions of the applicant, we can move on to public testimony if there is public testimony. Thank you for your presentation tonight. It was very good also. For those viewing via Zoom webinar, please communicate by using the raised hand feature in your Zoom menu bar. If calling in, press 9 to alert the chair that you would like to speak. We are now in the public testimony portion of the meeting. We will call testimony in groups, starting with those in favor of the application, then those opposed to the application, and then those neither in favor nor opposed. So now is the time for testimony in favor of the application. Do we have anybody? I see a hand raised. We have Dick Harbert. You may speak. Please introduce yourself when you are unmuted, or you may unmute yourself. Oh, hand went down. Okay, maybe we don't have any public testimony in favor of the application. Oh, Mr. Harbert, would you like to speak?
Mr. Harbart, you should be able to just unmute yourself at this point. Mr. Harbart, we cannot hear you at this time.
Maybe we'll move on and come back to him to see if he can unmute himself in a moment. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the application? We have a hand raised. Kauha, please state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Calvin Hamras. I'm an architect, and I live at 5075 Southwest Main Avenue. I also have had an architectural and planning business on 12578 Southwest Broadway, downtown Beaverton. So I wear two hats in this neighborhood, and I have been involved in a lot of the planning issues. I've seen a lot of change in the city. So, but that's my hats. I have written a letter, and just to address the letter, my major concern, and I did hear the applicant say that there wasn't any architectural significance in the existing building of Merle Davies. I'm opposing the demolition of Merle Davies. The other application parts are I have no issues with at this time. My major issue is with the demolition of a designated historic building. I understand the difficulties of this site as an architect, but I am just very concerned about losing historic building that has been designated a significant site. I think Beaverton, it's just easy to wash this away in a few years. Maybe nobody will remember, but my kids went to that school. I walk around that school. I've lived in the neighborhood. I'm attached to historic. Beaverton has very little historic significant spaces. I advocate to the staff to maybe rethink this, that this building, and I would be willing to live with maybe not the entire building, but some of that building, possibly the facade, the L-shaped facade on Farmington, and
I'm sorry to cut you off, but your time is up.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know I was on a timer. I understand. So I oppose the demolition of the Merle Davies High School in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will try again with Dick Harbert. If you would like to speak, you may state your name and address for the record. I think you are unmuted at this time. But we cannot hear you. Yeah, we still cannot hear Mr. Harbert. So I'm going to do a call for anyone else interested in providing public testimony in opposition to the application. Okay. Seeing none, I will call for anybody who wants to provide testimony neither in favor nor opposed to the application. Okay, we have a new hand. Michael Harris, I'm butchering your name, Hamris, sorry. You may unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
I should be unmuted, I hope.
You are, yes.
Excellent. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Well, obviously, you heard my father speak before me, and he touches on a lot of the things that I feel as well. But, you know, if you look over some of the things that the way cities are moving now with the new modern and the new, and everybody is getting in this position of just kind of erasing our history one piece at a time. I'd also like to point out too that the significance of the teacher and the name of the teacher and what she brought to education. So in my mind, with what's going on here too, this kind of erases that from people's minds. The building is significant, whether the inside or the outside isn't deemed historical by United States codifications or however that falls, but it's still a historic building to Beaverton. Inside has been gone through changes. I realized that because I went through high school when they first started annexing Merle Davies. To me, this would make a great site for obviously a company like McMenamins to come in and turn it into kind of a Kennedy school. Obviously, there's some issues with asbestos and lead paint, but that's kind of part of what old buildings are about. There are ways to, kind of rectify those situations. But I think the most important thing here, and I would urge you all to really think about this too, is that Merle Davies is a key factor in the education system in Beaverton. And Beaverton High School wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Merle Davies.
Oh, shoot. Can't even get mail now.
So that's all I want to say. You got to think of the one of the forerunners, the forethought of what she did for our little town, created something that nobody else has really kind of gone to that level. I mean, and I believe me, I studied drama under Mr. Erickson. So you all know that's a significant part of that culture too. But Merle Davies, I'm telling you right now, you'd have to put a monument at the very least. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. We will now call on Dick Harbert. I think you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, bravo.
If you could state your name and address before you get started.
All right. I appreciate the opportunity to make a statement in support of the rebuilding of the 109-year-old Beaverton High School. Because of the resulting new modern high school will be better for the students and the Beaverton business community. My name is Dick Harbert. My address is 7540 Southwest North Shire in Portland, but in the Beaverton School District. I have a personal perspective on this project. 65 years ago, I entered Beaverton as a freshman. Many good teachers helped me and my fellow students prepare for our lives after high school. My 4 years at Beaverton prepared me for studying engineering at Oregon State University. And I went on to work on large infrastructure projects around the world before returning to live in this community. The BHS building is old. It has been expanded, survived fires, suffered leaking roofs, and requires increased maintenance costs for its aging structure and systems. Notably, it ranks lowest of all district schools to withstand an earthquake. It has had a good and useful life, but is no longer fit to serve our community. In addition to the education provided, the high school benefits the community economically. Businesses who recruit talented workers and require skilled workforce factor schools into their decision-making process for site location. When people look for houses to buy, they value good school ratings. Now, Superintendent Balderas and the school board have the responsibility for performance, but the mood or culture of a school building influences the learning environment by providing safety, modern teaching tools, and pride. We need a new Beaverton High School, and the voters agreed when they passed the 2022 bond that included the construction of a new facility. I serve on the 2022 Bond Accountability Committee and am currently chairman. I also served 5 years on the 2014 Bond Accountability Committee that provided oversight to the school board of building 7 new schools and 2 major renovations to substantially improve the education facilities in this district. Based on my experience, the district facilities staff has done an excellent job in managing the design and construction of new school facilities. For the BHS rebuild, the staff has selected and hired a competent architect to design a school for our community. They have sought input from the community and tried to accommodate concerns. I have discussed concerns regarding the BHS rebuild with the staff. 2 of the community issues that were raised are the preservation of Merle Davies School Building and the neighborhood parking during construction. The historic Merle Davies Building, as has been pointed out, named after an admired teacher and principal, is located on the BHS property most suitable to locate the new high school. After an earlier renovation of the complete interior of that building, the significant historic architecture value is limited to the exterior facade. Balancing the need to accommodate the number of students and classrooms within the limitations of the property boundary against the importance of preserving local history, it was determined that the old building should be demolished, but an appropriate remembrance of Merle Davies be incorporated into the new building. As with many building projects, on-street parking will temporarily become more competitive during construction. We anticipate that the city of Beaverton will enforce parking time limits around the commercial areas near the.
You have just a few seconds left. I just want to give you a heads up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope that didn't count against me. Anyway, near the high school to ease the impact. Given this background, I support the construction of a new high school because I believe it will benefit the students and economy of this community. I urge the Planning Commission to provide timely reviews and approvals to facilitate the construction schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. And do any commissioners have questions of Mr. Harbert? I forgot to provide the opportunity with the other testimony if commissioners have questions. Seeing none, we have one more hand raised. We have Nicole Castro. I believe you may unmute. You are now unmuted, so please state your name and address for the record, and then you will have 5 minutes to speak.
Yeah, hi. My name is Nicole Cascio. My address is 7920 Southwest Lantana Place in Beaverton. I'm probably one of the younger folk. I actually graduated from Beaverton High School in 2012. I was one of the first students to use the redone Merle Davies. So we never used that building. It was closed for many years. We were out in the field in separate buildings for classes. So in the year 2000, end of 2011, my graduating class of 2012 was able to use Merle Davies for safer purposes for school. So we were no longer outside on the field in little boxes. But essentially, to me, getting rid of Merle Davies seems honestly like a very big waste of money. It's alumni money. I'm sure there's taxpayer money somewhere involved in there. It's a brand new facility. It's only 10 years old. There's a great lecture hall. There's great community there. And it does take care of some overflow, which that high school does have. As for the high school itself, being someone that graduated from there, it is very old. It's very run down. It's not up to safety purposes. There's a lot of large staircases. I was injured in high school and I had to rely on one single elevator to get myself to classes up and down the stairs. So I'm all for redoing Beaverton High School to make it better for our students and safer. But Merle Davies to me is this historic building, as previous people have said, but it's still a brand new building. The inside is brand new. And it's essentially wasting money and a great opportunity for any overflow that might happen as well. So that is where I stand.
Okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will do one more call. Does anybody from the public wish to provide testimony this evening, either in support, opposition, or neither, just wanting to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the applicant's rebuttal. The applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Please keep comments focused on issues raised during public testimony portion and do not provide any new evidence. To any commission, okay, yes.
Chair and I, we would indulge the commission to allow us to caucus before we go to rebuttal, if that would be acceptable to you. I don't think it'll take long and we would be right back.
Okay, maybe we take a 5-minute recess.
Could we make it 10?
Yes, we can make it 10. We will come back at 8:06 p.m. So, as a reminder, now is time for rebuttal, which is limited to 5 minutes. Please keep comments focused on issues raised during public testimony, and please do not provide new evidence.
Thank you, Chair Nye. We have 2 points we would wish to rebut about historic and about condition number 2 in the design review. First, we'll talk about historic, and I turn it over to Ms. Ruiz.
Thank you, Steve. Again, obviously, as we were going through the planning of the site, that was a strong consideration in terms of kind of feasibility analyses around the reuse of the existing Merle Davies building. There were concerns that came up regarding the condition of the building, both its sort of acoustic performance. While there were seismic improvements done with the last one, that was over 20 years ago. And so it would likely not still need additional requirements to meet today's seismic codes. But more importantly, the building itself, due to its kind of narrow width, is not really suited for the changing pedagogies and teaching and the need for flexible spaces. The lecture hall that was talked about earlier is not something that is consistent with what we see in modern day education, and quite frankly doesn't provide equitable access. So that's something that was a consideration as well. And I think the biggest piece is the constrained nature of the site, right? We need, in order to meet the needs of the capacity of the site, to utilize that entire northern portion along Farmington with higher density buildings. As you can see, our building is almost 3 stories as it kind of makes its way there, while still allowing for places for exterior access that are secured and contained in that courtyard. That said, we recognize the importance and the significance of the contributions of Merle Davies, and part of our plan has always been to honor her and her contributions in a monument in the building. We are currently seating a committee that is actually looking at incorporating historical art and culturally significant elements from the community and from the building and from her into the future building. We just haven't had a chance to allow that committee to do the work to figure out exactly where that lies. But it has always been our intent to honor her contributions as well as those of others that have been big contributors to the future of Beaverton High School.
And for condition number 2, I'm going to call on Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, commissioners. My name is Damian Hall. I'm an attorney with Dunn Carney here tonight representing the applicant, Beaverton School District. My address is in the chat. Chair Nye, if you might indulge me, I think we're probably getting pretty close to the 5-minute mark. So if an additional minute or 2 were in the offing, we'd take it. However, let me just jump right in here. There are some practical considerations and examples that I think we need to give as far as what condition number 2 would potentially conflict with, as far as the school and the district's need to control access to the site at certain times and have the flexibility to engage in risk management associated with operation of the site. That's really kind of falls into 3 categories of things. One is, just the day-to-day while students are on the site. Ensuring that the district is in a position to be able to exclude members of the public from walking through the middle of the school on an as-needed basis. Another is, after school and at other times when there are any number of events that may be happening on the campus and on the school grounds. And the need for crowd control and things along those lines. And it may just be as simple as needing to be able to exclude folks who have not purchased the ticket to the event. And then the third category of things is more serious, along the lines of emergency situations and the need to lock down the school and exclude members of the public entirely until the emergency has ended. And all 3 of those categories of things, you can easily figure how, as drafted, proposed condition number 2 would be violated with if the district took the steps it needs to take to ensure safety and operability of its control of the school site. And so those are the practical implications. There's a couple legal issues. Steve mentioned previously that there's state law that condition number 2 is inconsistent with, which authorizes districts to control the grounds of their schools. Also, condition number 2 is inconsistent with the language of the city code. So the code section at issue BDC 60.55.25.9 expressly does not expressly does not allow establishment of access ways like those proposed in condition 2 unless there are 2 findings made by the Planning Commission. The first finding is that the proposal incurs a negative impact on accessibility. And the second finding is that that negative impact justifies imposition of access ways. Here, the project as proposed would improve east-west site circulation, and the code relied on and discussed by staff talks about block length. That's unchanged by the proposal. So there's no real negative impact here to accessibility on which to make the first finding. And then the second finding can't be made without identifying a negative impact that justifies the imposition of a public access way. And this justification standard is really is fitting, as the city bears the burden to demonstrate that an exaction like the access way imposed by condition 2 would be justified and proportionate to project impacts. That hasn't been done here. So the Planning Commission, I think should consider closely whether or not it can make those findings and justify the access way. And to be clear, I'm the attorney, I have to say the legalistic things, but in the interests of both the city and the district, I believe, are aligned here. And that's about providing for unfettered east-west circulation through the site for the public. It's just that the district, as discussed by Steve, has no plans to cut that off or impede that in any way. It's just that the district does need the flexibility to manage, operate, and secure and engage in risk management on its site, and can't be violating its land use approvals should we be so fortunate as to get them in its day-to-day operations, and taking very seriously its obligations to the safety of its students. So I think that's, so we've proposed what we hope is a workable solution, and we tried to keep it simple to the point, and add a permanent standard to condition of approval number 2, not say take it off the table entirely, not say that there's no place in the school for accessibility, that it's going to stop, that the district's going to stop folks from going from side to side here, but really just to say that the district will not impose permanent barriers on accessibility east-west through the campus. And again, you've seen the circulation plans, you've seen the layout of the campus as proposed. The entire construction and was built around these 2 east-west and 1 north-south pedestrian and cyclist spine, so that folks can move through the site. So that's the intent, and except for being responsive to the needs of events and emergency situations and security of the school, that's the intent of the district, is to allow that unfettered access.
Okay. Okay, we can move on then to are there any questions from the commissioners of the applicant at this point? Okay, seeing none, we will have staff provide their comments, and then we will deliberate.
Chair, I'm so sorry. I put my hand up late after you said if there's any questions.
Yes.
This might be for Mr. Hall. Just understanding what you just went through there in terms of talking about the whole idea of adding that word permanent on those entry exit points, and you quickly laid out a couple, I think 3 different examples of where the school would want the power to block those entrances. is that power in motion at other Beaverton District schools? I'm in my head, I'm picturing taking my daughter to soccer practice at some of the other schools in the area and driving freely onto these campuses, elementary schools and so on and so forth, and not seeing either permanent or movable barriers to get in and out of parking at most of the schools I've been to around the area.
So let me respond first in saying that many of our campuses do have the swinging gate on the driveways to the parking lots, not all of them. And with respect to fencing, we are moving forward with fencing a lot of our open elementary, and because it's mainly at elementary schools, putting in gates and putting up fences to create that layer of dissuasion of allowing people on the site. So while we have these gates and will be installing in other locations these gates, our typical practice is just to leave them open, and if they never ever get closed, all the better. It's just we need to have that ability should the need arise. And Mr. Hall, if you had anything else to say to respond to that.
Nothing to add. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Cool. Thanks, y'all.
Okay. Does staff have any final comments?
And again, Steve Regner with the City of Beaverton. I do want to address a couple of issues raised by the applicant team. Both Mr. Sparks and Mr. Hall raised some issues. First, I'd like to address the code provisions in 605525.9. Staff disagrees with Mr. Hall's analysis of the applicability of these provisions. More specifically, I'll refer to 605525.9, where the code reads, an access way will not be required where the impacts from development, redevelopment, or both are low and do not provide a reasonable justification for the estimated costs of such access ways. So there's a two-pronged test in our code about when these access ways can be exempted. One, impact of development, and tied to the cost of such an access way. The applicant would not be incurring any additional cost through this condition of approval. So we do not believe that the analysis by Mr. Hall is accurate in this case. Staff would also like to note that if in fact there is a change in the needs of the school district, the modification of a decision mechanism does exist within our code. If 10, 15 years down the road, Beaverton School District can demonstrate a need to modify their security on the school, and they can make a justified reason, they can come back to Planning Commission and modify or eliminate the condition of approval as written. That being said, staff has heard some specific examples from the applicant tonight. So staff has crafted, and we have not provided this information to the applicant yet, so we might want to recess again. But some additional language to acknowledge certain situations where extra control might be more desirable to the school district. I'm going to share my screen really quickly so everyone can read this language as I read it out loud. I think you can all see my PowerPoint screen. So the modification to the condition, not including the word permanent as requested by the applicant, but the underlined information at the end, which reads, this condition shall not be interpreted to prohibit temporary closures during regular school hours or public safety emergencies. This would allow the school district to control access in areas when, as they've cited in Mr. Hall's testimony, able to exclude people for day-to-day safety, able to exclude people in needs for crowd control, any emergency situations. So we believe that this language would address those three categories Mr. Hall listed. Again, this is new information to the applicant, so I welcome the opportunity for them to caucus on this to be able to provide a response to this proposed modification to the condition of approval.
And I might suggest maybe adding something about temporary or special events. I think they specifically were concerned about sporting events, needing to do crowd control for sporting events. So, but I'll let you negotiate that with them. Mr. Sparks has his hand raised. I'm gonna suggest.
Well, let us caucus. Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna suggest we take a 10-minute recess. You can caucus internally and with staff, and so we can come back at 8:32.
Chair Nye, a quick question for Mr. Sparks. Would you like to caucus internally, or would you like city staff to join you in the conversation?
Give us 5 minutes, and then please feel free to join.
Understood. Thank you.
unmute there.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, so I think we are all here. Mr. Regner, if you want to go ahead and share.
Thank you, Chair Nye. Again, Steve Regner, City Beaverton. After discussion with the applicant team, we have agreed to a minor modification to what staff proposed right before our recess. I'm going to share my screen again to show the language. I believe you can see my PowerPoint screen now. So the one word has been modified in our suggested amendment to read, "This condition shall not be interpreted to prohibit temporary closures during regular school hours or public safety purposes." It's that word "purposes" that has been modified. It originally read "emergencies." Both the applicant and the school district see, or excuse me, the applicant and the city see the term "purposes" to act a little bit more broadly, where there are needs for crowd control or other events. Chair Nye, you spoke to special events previously before the recess. That is somewhat the intention of the broadening of that term, is when there is a public safety need, whether it's an emergency or a non-emergency, would permit a temporary closure during the duration of that public service need.
Sounds great.
And I believe that's the only comments staff has.
Okay, sounds good. Then, with final comments complete, I will close the public hearing, and as standard procedure, I will randomly poll commissioners to state their conclusions on the application. I will start with Commissioner Winter.
Well, in a project of this size, it's unusual not to have a little bit more comment from the public and the commission. I will start with the issue we just got done discussing, and frankly, I'm glad that we were able to come to that conclusion, because I think both parties are interested in having an equitable solution, not only for today, but long term. And I felt that the conflict that we were dealing with was something that could be addressed if we could get the parties at the same place at the same time to talk about it. So I'm glad we got to that equitable meeting round. As far as everything else, I'm disappointed that so many of the trees are going to be cut down, as I always am, but it looks as though there's quite a bit more breast height improvement from staff and from landscape architecture organization. I think the structure itself and the DEI issues contained in the construction project of this size have been adequately addressed by the architects and the design team that way. And I think it's a beautiful structure. I think it'll last for another 100 years. So I'm going to complete it.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on to Commissioner Lawler.
I'll thank my fellow Commissioner Winter for summing up nicely the attributes of this project. I think, you know, it's always difficult when we have to balance the needs of new development and I think modernization plus seismic attributes of this new building with the loss of a building that, although architecturally, normally we're used to historic structures being described in the historic inventory as having some attributes reflective of a certain period, and this one really just seemed to be reflective of an individual. So I think it differs in that regard, and I think that there's plenty of momentum been expressed to memorialize Merle Davies in a different fashion in the new building, and I heartily encourage that effort to continue. And so I think, but I do think the new building being pushed up close to Farmington is kind of where a lot of our design elements are being, you know, to energize the street frontage and et cetera, although the verbiage that we've heard about trying to create a dynamic downtown. And I think that although this technically isn't in the downtown area, it's right on the fringe, and I think it will those high school students will continue to contribute to the livelihood of our downtown area. And I think it's going to be a great building. And I think it's been very thoughtfully, both architecturally and from a usability standpoint, kind of separating the athletics and the educational. And I think with the educational and athletics kind of being separated, you know, there might be also an ability to kind of ensure the safety of the students, because they will be sort of in pods. But I do believe that having that access through the center of the project is really important. And I'm really grateful that there was a compromise condition, which I heartily believe we should approve. And the project itself should be moved forward through to completion. So I'm in agreement with the project.
Hey, Commissioner Akala.
I agree with our fellow commissioners. I think they summed up really nicely. The building looks beautiful, and I'm in agreement with it. Let's see Beaverton looking pretty like that with that building.
Great. And Commissioner Ellis?
Yeah, I think a lot of consistency between the commissioners here. Kudos to both the staff team and the application team for working out a quick resolution to that hanging chat issue about access points. So I dig that. That was a good item. When I think about the other controversial point about Merle Davies, I think I'm also in agreement largely with the other commissioners that as long as we can memorialize the human, which is what it seems the building was intended for, that we'll probably still be on the right side of this discussion. As the changes that have, like when I go on the internet and just search for old pictures of Merle, it looks nothing like it did then. And so the memory part of it to me is more about the memorialization of the human now as opposed to the building, especially for the fantastic purposes for which the updates will serve. From a pure personal thing, I don't think that this has no bearing at all on any of my votes for these individual initiatives. The design is super interesting. You know, when I grew up on the East Coast, when I think about 150-year-old schools and schools that have stood the test of time from a taste and design standpoint, I'm not sure if that's the design that will be another 100 years from now. It'll still look the same way. So we'll see. But hey, you know, taste is subjective. Outside of that, everything I think was good. So some good materials for today. Oh, and sorry, one echo to Commissioner Winter we're getting a lot more trees. I was heartbroken when I heard 11 out of 12 were going away, but then I think it was Commissioner McCann who said that it was like 75% more trees will actually be the result of everything. So it's like, okay, that's a fair trade. So it was good to hear that.
Okay, great, thank you. And I would agree with my fellow commissioners. I wanted to state how I appreciate the equity process this project went through and the ability of the design team to share it with the commission. I think it highlights something that's the city of Beaverton specifically has been really trying to bring to the forefront. So, and I think it was then translated into a very good architectural design that has good pedestrian qualities, and I appreciate the landscape softening the building. The existing high school is not the softest and most welcoming from a pedestrian environment standpoint, so I appreciate that. I do have one regret on this project. I'm sad that the public entrance is not on the street, reinforcing the public urban form. That's my one disappointment. And I believe that the historic context, I think the design team is committed to integrating a memorial. And I hope also that with that, along with that memorial somewhere in the building, they'll be able to memorialize their design story. I think it means a lot and people can actually read it in the building if it's explained to them. So I think it's a good project and I look forward to seeing it happen. With that, do we have a motion to approve or deny? Commissioner Lawler, maybe?
Sure. But I noted earlier that we have kind of two different aspects to this. So I'm going to go with the short one first, and then I'll go with the long one. So, and I'm sorry, I have a cat tail in my face. I move that we recommend to the City Council the approval of case file LU 32023-00260, the Beaverton High School replacement, as with specifically noting the street vacation, which is a recommendation to the City Council, which is case file SV 32023-00256, that based on the facts and findings found in the staff report dated August 11th, all of the supplemental memos and the conditions of approval cited in attachment K, and as amended this evening, that we recommend the City Council adopt that street vacation.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Great. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I will do a vote by roll call. Commissioner Akal.
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis.
Aye.
Commissioner Lawler.
Aye.
Commissioner Winter.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The vote passes unanimous. And the second motion.
Okay. I move that we approve case file LU 32023-00260 for the Beaverton High School replacement, and that including case files CU 32023-00445, DR 32023-00251, DDR 12023-00446, HRD 32023-00253, SDM 12023-00254, SDM 12023-00255, TP 32023-00258, and VAR 32023-00259, based on the facts and findings found in the staff report dated August 11th, supplemental memos dated August 23, and with the amendments to the conditions of approval as noted in the supplemental memo earlier this evening, discussions at the hearing.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll also second this.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any discussion? Great job in listing all of those. And so I will do a vote by roll call, starting with Commissioner Akal again.
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis.
Aye.
Commissioner Lawler.
Aye.
Commissioner Winter.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so motion passes unanimously. The Planning Commission's decisions will be memorialized in land use orders that were provided to all parties that provided oral and written testimony. If you would like to appeal the decision, you must appeal in accordance with the applicable provisions of the Beaverton Development Code and rules of the Land Use Board of Appeals. We are now adjourned at 8:52. We appreciate everybody's participation tonight.